we managed about 2,000 units across about 60 sites.
Jeez. How much did you sell that for?
Just over 4 million.
Overall value, what's your portfolio value at the moment?
Converting into like 7-8 bedroom, which generates $6,500 a month of income off of one house. So
thanks for checking out the podcast. This is From the Ground Up with Mitch Nunn. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here. You've got a lot of experience from everything that I've seen in terms of the property space, property world. But just to give people who maybe don't know who you are or haven't seen your social media content and so on, if they haven't seen you before, give us a highlight reel. Give us an idea of what you do, who you are, what you do, and a couple of like deals you've got going on at the minute.
Yeah, so I'm Mitch Nunn, and yeah, I guess probably maybe a lot of people haven't seen me because I only recently started pushing my socials as of May this year. But really, I'm southeast based in Essex, and really I don't focus on one strategy. I kind of do everything from buy-to-lets to HMOs. I've done commercial to residential conversion more recently, and at the moment I'm focusing on HMOs because I guess the high interest rate environment we're in at the moment. So yeah, focusing on those, but I'm just about to start my first new build site as well. So really all things, and yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Yeah. All things property. So
yeah.
You said you've done commercial to residential. So you don't do anything where you land on it being commercial, you rent it out commercial. So everything moves over to or is already residential property, right?
Yeah, so obviously our commercial to residential was a block of flats, permitted development. We obviously converted that to, the existing building was then converted to 6 flats, but we also got planning to put a penthouse apartment, which made it 7 flats. I think GDV was about 1.5 million. And that's something we're in the process of selling off at the moment.
Okay, amazing. And the interesting what you said about the HMOs, because I've started investing in HMOs. I'm buying HMOs at the moment, exactly for the reason that you said about the high interest rates. A lot of people have come to me and said, I'm nervous about, the investing in property right now. The property market is awful, and I'm thinking, one, it's really not awful, but two, you just combat it. Either you buy things even more discounted, or you rent them out for even more. And HMOs are such a good example of that for me. So which is why I started investing in it. And it seems to be a bit of a focus from the social media stuff I've seen. It seems to be not maybe a focus as in that's all you're doing, but you seem to have picked up some HMOs recently, and also quite substantial ones, right? You've got like 8, 9, 10 beds.
Yeah, we only ever do Sui Generis HMO, so 7 bedrooms and above, and obviously that ensures that we get commercial valuations. So yeah, we'll never do anything smaller than that. But yeah, I mean, that is the focus at the moment. I think you can have a property strategy, but that strategy also needs to change dependent on the environment we're in, and because of the high interest rate environment, if you were doing a buy to let, just purely buying buy to lets, if you're cheap, certainly down in the south. I'm not sure about up north. You probably get a higher gross yield, but down south you get 5-6% gross yield. So if you're paying 5-6% on your interest rate,
you're done.
So you've either got to have the view that, okay, well, I'm just buying it now because I know that it'll cash flow in a couple of years when interest rates come back down, or you've got to, change your strategy. And for me, that is HMOs, and we're getting such strong room rents at the moment with the HMOs. We're taking, $300,000 house, converting into like 7-8 bedroom, which generates probably like $6,500 a month of income off of one house. So
wow.
And I guess that sort of strategy is almost, I don't want to say completely like foolproof in the sense that, but I think even if you've got a slight tweak, I think interest rates have peaked out, but even if you used to get a slight tweak, higher, your rent to sort of mortgage ratio, your coverage is so high that it just makes sense.
Even on the Sui Generis stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know Sui Generis, do you want to just quickly explain what that is, what that means as a use class?
So obviously C3 is obviously single dwelling use class. Then you go to C4, which is up to a 6-bed HMO. So obviously when you go from a 7-bed HMO or above, it goes for full planning, which is Sui Generis.
Yeah.
So Sui Generis covers off anything that's 7 bedrooms or above, basically.
Yeah. So if you've got a 7-bed or more HMO, you have to go through planning in order to get that Sui Generis use class.
Correct.
I want to talk to you about that because I'm personally very interested in investing in more HMOs, and I've capped it. I'm buying a few 6 beds at the minute, but I've capped it at that because I thought So I really want to go through planning at the minute. I've got a lot going on. But if that's all you go for, that's really interesting to me. And I'd be keen to work out how you go about that. So I'll touch on that in a bit. But give me a snapshot of your team then. Have you got a team at the minute? Because you've got loads of different projects going on.
Yeah.
What does your team look like? What does day-to-day look like for you in your business?
Yeah, so we've got to build teams, and that's consists of about 6 people. And then kind of within that 6 people, you've kind of got like a strip out and grounds work team, and then you've got like a first fix, second fix team. And we find that works well. That has scaled up. So as we take on more projects, obviously we have to take on more bodies. And we basically do everything in-house. The only things that we don't, there's like 5 packages that we sort of don't do in-house, which is obviously the plumbing, electrics, plastering, tiling, which we can do tiling, but we always faster if we get a tiler. And then the decorating. And basically we do everything within that. And to give you an example, we set a deadline of turning around like a 7-8 bed HMO. So the one we've actually just finished this week. It was 21 weeks, so 5 months to fully convert a house, strip it out, back to brick, and then basically to reinstate it as a 8 bed HMO. So and I like to have a team around the development side because you can act quickly, you've got much more control. Whereas beyond that point, I never see myself having like a lettings team, because beyond that point of we're done with refinance, right, send it across to the management team. I don't want to know anything else about that. I just want to get the rent statement once a month, and then,
So everything that you have, everything you've developed so far is rented out by a lettings agency. Yeah. You don't manage anything yourself. Yeah. It's interesting you said. Alfred Jade came onto the podcast recently, and he said the same thing. Because one of the questions I asked was, when you get to a certain amount of rent per month, you're paying quite a substantial amount in just letting agency fees. Yeah. Does it not make more sense to bring someone in-house to be a lettings manager? And he was just like, no. Leave it to people who know what they're doing. Yeah. Pay someone, because you pay that 10%, whatever it is, of management fees. But you then, as part of that, get access to the whole team. Yeah. Whereas if you've got one person in, then they're not able to get to everything. And also, it's just more hassle. Yeah. So it's interesting that you've got to that point yourself, and you also made that decision.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we're not touched on it, but I've had a couple of businesses which I've sort of set up, grown, and then scaled, and also exited both those businesses. And one of those was a property management business. So we specialised in like block management. We managed about 2,000 units across about 60 sites. Jeez. So I know firsthand, what a headache management is. Yeah. And you're always firefighting. So I guess if you was to bring the management in-house, not only do you have the issues that come with the properties, if you then build a team around that, you also have the issues that come with building a team within a business. So I think I'd much rather, and I think I did a reel on this, and one of my 5 tips of trying to scale a multi-million pound portfolio is outsource your management. Yeah. I think as soon as you're doing management in-house and you're dealing with the day-to-day issues, that's leaking, that's broken, they've not paid the rent. It creates like operational drag, which then it just holds you back from actually what you should be doing is raising money, growing your portfolio, compound interest, leveraging up. So and it's leveraging out
without being harsh to letting agents, it's leveraging out the lower skill, lower. Well,
it's time for money.
Yeah, exactly. Management. You need to be leveraging the high value tasks. Yeah. You need to be leveraging the low value tasks so that you can focus on the high value tasks. Yeah. What was the other business that you built and exited?
So I had 2 businesses. So in 2012, which was actually the first year I bought my first ever buy-to-let property, set up a company called Securo, which was with my partner then, Neil. And in the early stages, I think because I'm actually a locksmith by trade.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, we can go right the way back, but we will maybe just move ahead slightly. So I'm a locksmith by trade. So I used to be a locksmith, but then I met Neil. Neil was a commercial agent at Kemsley, and it was the recession, coming back to the recession, the commercial market was very dead. He said, I'm going to set up this business called Securo. Do you want to get involved? So I went, yeah, great. Actually, I can fold my locksmith business into that. So in the early days, we had the mortgages to pay, the kids to feed. So we were like, what is Securo? Well, let's just do maintenance. We'll do anything, cleaning, gardening. We basically were like a maintenance company. But as we then scaled that up, we started to do more security, site security. Not like man guarding. This was more like cameras, alarms. And then we started to sort of niche down and focus into actual construction site security. So probably within the last 3-4 years, we focused on construction site security, and we had about 250 sites nationally that we worked for, all the big boys, so Taylor Wimpey, Bellway, Balfour BT, Redrow Homes and all of those. And we did that. It was actually a really good model. So we never sold them anything. We basically rented them an alarm system with monitoring. So we had this recurring revenue, month in, month out, which was really good. And we scaled that up. I think we had about 25 staff, and I think our turnover was probably about 3 million, something like that. And then we exited that in 2021. Had to work till like a year handover till 2022, and I've been unemployed ever since. So
how much did you sell that for? That business?
Just over 4 million.
Okay. So you split that with your business partner Neil.
Yeah.
So you walked with 2 million from building that.
Well, that was the enterprise value. So when you start going net, the legal fees on a transaction of that size was just eye-watering. You think it's bad on a property purchase, but when you get into selling a business, so they'll net up with a few taxes and bits to pay. So probably shy of 2 each, but
that's really impressive. So you had your locksmith business that folded into the Securo business, which you built up. You exited. You made just shy of 2 million yourself from that. And right now, property portfolio, what's that looking like in terms of overall value? What's your portfolio value at the moment?
It's probably about 11 million, something like that. And that's made up of all sorts: single lets, buy to lets, development sites, HMOs.
Wow.
Yeah,
a lot.
So
lots of different things, lots of moving parts.
It's strange. It doesn't feel like it's at that level, but so
I suppose if you've outsourced it to a really good management company, it probably wouldn't feel that overwhelming.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Don't forget, we help people who are looking to seriously build their property portfolios, do it in a hands-free and efficient way. So if you're interested in building a portfolio and you've got the capital ready to go, then make sure you get in touch with me. The link will be in the description.
But let's just bring it back then. So you were a locksmith, right? Before that, even where did you grow up? Where you live at the moment? Have you always been?
Yes, I'm down in Essex. So just had a normal upbringing. I've got brothers and sisters. I'm one of 4. I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest boy. I've got an older sister, but just kind of my family. They weren't that entrepreneurial. My mum's a cleaner. From when I remember, my dad was. He actually used to do like man security, but then he was a salesman. So no sort of entrepreneurial background from that sense. But I guess most people that are entrepreneurial, they see something from an early age, don't they? Everyone's got the story about you'll do some you'll trade football cards at school or something like that. And I think for me, I used to like wash cars. So I used to like walk down the road with like 2 red buckets, one with soapy water, one with hot water. I used to clean cars for like £3 a go, and multiple paper rounds. On a Thursday, 300 papers turn up, and you got to put all the leaflets in, and then go delivering them. So I think I showed quite a good work ethic from an early age, and then from there I was obviously went to school, and I just couldn't wait to get working, really, earning some money.
Really? So was school positive, negative, indifferent?
Just normal. It was a normal school. I got a funny story where during my GCSEs, my mum actually booked a holiday.
Okay. During the exams?
During the exams. And I remember going into school and telling my teacher, saying I've got a holiday, but they said, that's when your GCSEs are. And I was like, I know, but mum's booked it.
Tough.
But mum wasn't overly worried about sort of schooling. I think she always said, look, as long as you're happy and as long as you're kind to people, like, she didn't really worry, which I know looking back now I've got kids, it's like, probably should have tried a little bit harder. I know it's not big or clever, and I wish I'd tried harder then, but maybe she knew that I'd always be all right. Went to school till 16, obviously left, and then worked at a local locksmiths company and become fully qualified by the MLA.
So
proper-
no college, no university,
No.
just went straight into
straight out to work.
locksmithing.
Locksmith, which is a little family-owned business down in Southend. I think I was getting paid I actually got the pay slip at home, like £133 a week or something like that.
Yeah.
But then just stayed there and sort of become fully qualified. Then went out, got my own van, started doing subcontract work, started doing work whereby, if people weren't for the like electricity bills, if people weren't paying their electrics, you used to have to break into their house and put like prepayment meters in and stuff like that. So
Wow.
it was always an interesting day.
Yeah.
But and then just from there kind of then folded that into Securo. That was like 2012. Then obviously we exited that 10 years later, 2021, 22. So
you're kind of a self-employed locksmith traveling around doing different jobs in your area in Essex, and then you jumped into, obviously it sounds like you jumped into a business, built it up, exited for 2 million, 4 million, and that sounds really exciting. But you said there's a 10-year growth period. What was the decision to jump from locksmith into business owner? What was that like?
I think obviously I always knew that I would be more than a locksmith. When I actually went to the job centre and they said, well, this was when I left school, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to get into sales, I think. I'm quite good at communicating. I think I'll be good at sales. And they said, well, look, there's this job at this locksmith's. They've got a showroom as well where they sell safes and bits like that. So you could learn like a trade. You could be a locksmith, but also you could do some sales. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. So obviously then become the locksmith. But transitioning from that to the business, I guess I just knew that I wanted it to be more. And at that point, Neil obviously within Securo, started to pick up some contracts for man guarding and stuff like that. So I knew that could be more. So I was like, do you know what? I'll fold that in and sort of take the chance, really. And we had some office space, which we had, which was a friend of ours, which we just rented. We used to come in and, just try and find a position and, try and monetize it somehow, really.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think that you go from, within that 10-year period, go from that, find a little niche, scale it, build a team, and obviously then exit for multi-millions 10 years later. I mean, it's a bit of an art. And then obviously to do that with the property management business as well, where we scaled that up. Obviously didn't achieve a value that we did like Securo, but it was still a multi-six-figure exit as well, that company was called Urban Life. So
okay, so you had the Securo, you had the management company. You exited them both. Did you exit them both around the same time?
So the property management business we set up in about 2017. We then exited that 2019.
I mean, multiple six figures for 2 years isn't bad.
Yeah, we did. I mean, obviously I almost oversaw that and didn't really take a salary for 2 years. So it's like time and effort. So
yeah,
if you're going to look at it on that basis, then probably not the great return. But again, it's, to be able to set something up, grow it to the point where actually somebody else sees value in it, that they will then happily pay you for that. And then to do that twice, that's quite a good feeling. So
yeah, I know a number of people that are thinking about building businesses to sell, because I think as a wealth creation, but also to become more cash rich, business seems to be the way to go. I think a lot of people talk about property as in the same breath as business, and it's just not. Business is much quicker, much more fast paced.
Yeah, a lot more involved.
A lot more involved. You're much more heavily involved in it all.
Yeah.
But you picked up your first buy-to-let then, you said, around the same kind of time as you jumped onto the Securo stuff.
Yeah.
What was that first deal like? And why did you buy it? What made you buy it? You got parents who aren't in property.
Yeah.
What made you
well,
go,
actually,
do you know what, I'm going to become
the first property I ever bought. So coming out the back of the recession, as the locksmith, I wanted to buy my own property. And at that time I was looking for flats. Still living at home with mum at this point. So this must be like 2008, 9 sort of thing. And I was just looking at flats locally, 2-bed flat. And mum said, well, actually I've seen a house that I would like to buy. Maybe you can buy our family house and then I'll move to there. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Well, I'm here already. I might as well try and do it. So I ended up buying the family house. Mum moved to the new house, and I realised very quickly that I'd overstretched myself at that point.
Okay.
Because as you do when you start to make a little bit of money, not only did I do that, went out and bought like a brand new Mercedes C-Class. It started sinking very quickly. And I thought, right, what can I do? So it was a 3-bed house. So I rented out 2 of the bedrooms for about £500 a month per bedroom. And that £1,000 was enough to sort of cover the mortgage, cover the bills, cover my living. I was like, actually that, so I was living quite comfortably at that point. Even to the point I then rented out the Mercedes C-Class.
Really?
So I thought, this is great. Actually, I
just need to rent everything.
Yeah, I just need to rent everything. So rented that out and just lived comfortably. So I think that's probably my first sort of like light bulb moment, thinking actually, I can see the benefit in, renting property out and generating income passively.
Yeah, and through almost a HMO, without even realising it, through a HMO strategy where you're renting it out room by room to make even more money than you probably could have done if you were renting the whole property as a single family dwelling.
Yeah.
So you went from there.
Then I went to the property
and bought a buy-to-let.
So this must have now been, it was 2012. So within that sort of period, obviously I started networking, and I met a couple of guys which were based down in Portsmouth. They were developers, again, almost got wiped out through the financial crisis, but managed to survive, and they kept on. So from there, they then went and done commercial to residential conversions down in Portsmouth. And their first development coming out the back of the recession, I basically bought a couple of apartments off plan, heavily discounted on their first development, and then they did another one, and I bought 3 apartments within that.
What kind of discounts are you talking about?
Well, the first development, quite heavy. I think the flats were valued about 112, and I think I bought them for like 75.
Jeez.
Yeah, so I was buying them. But
like
obviously
30%, 35%, is that?
So I was almost, so
jeez.
But I think because coming out of the recession, everyone was really nervous.
Yeah.
Even the lenders were nervous because...
And developers just needed the cash
Developers
in.
wanted to get, some of the units sold with lenders comfortable with the building. And then once they're comfortable with the building, generally they're then easier to then sell. So I was basically securing them and buying them off plan as they were then doing the development. So I think I don't know how long that period was. I think it was about 4 years. I think I must have bought about 18 apartments.
18?
18 in Portsmouth. Yeah.
You bought 18 apartments in Portsmouth?
Yeah. In
between 2000... Between when? 2012?
2012, and it must have been about...
And you bought 18 over...
2016, something like that. It must have been like a 4-year period. Yeah, I mean...
Were you able to do that because of the business that you had? Was that making loads of money? Like, how did you manage to buy 18 properties? Because what does that work out? I'm terrible at maths.
Yeah.
What does that work out to per year? Just shy of 5 a year.
Yeah, so, I mean, the 2, I had money. So basically, I made some money trading like small cap shares coming out the back of the recession. So I had some money.
You've done everything.
I do all sorts. So it had some money. I managed to roll that into the first development, but then I got a bit more creative on the next development. So because I was getting such heavy discounts, I actually bought 3 apartments in one block they had just finished, and I basically got bridging finance, waited 6 months. Because my discount was so good, after 6 months I could just basically then refinance and then just clear the bridging finance, and I would own the flats. So I just basically did that, and then I bought 6 in another development, 2 in another, and just basically scaled it up to have 18. But that stood me in, because obviously I could then basically live on that income from the 18 flats.
Well, that's a good size portfolio.
And, in Portsmouth they rent really well. It was low interest rate environment because obviously coming out the back of the recession. So, I was paying like 150 quid, for a mortgage and interest only. And these flats were renting like, £600-700. If you have 18 of those, you think, well, I can live off that income. That set me in a really good position to then sort of push on from there as the businesses grew, and it almost was like a sort of like compound effect going forward, really.
I've got a property at the minute. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. It is a property in Blackburn. Okay, not in a great area of Blackburn, I'm not going to lie, but it's worth, at the peak of the market, maybe last year, 160. maybe a value might look at it and say 150, but I reckon I can pick it up for about 95 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about just selling it on, or just making quickly flipping it. Or I was thinking about doing that strategy. So you get a bridge based off of the actual value of the property. So for anyone listening who doesn't quite understand, if the property is worth 150, a bridger might go to and say, well, it's worth 150, so we will lend against that value based on what it actually is worth rather than what your purchase price is.
Yeah.
And so that would essentially cover my purchase price. And I could then keep it on a bridge. It's already in great condition, so just rent it out, keep it on a bridge, make no profit for 6 months. But then when I refinance it onto a mortgage, I'd be making like £250 a month and have a house, but not in a fantastic area. So it's that kind of strategy, but the property's not in a great area. If you were me, would you just sell that, or would you hold it?
I think it probably comes down to what your longer term plan is. I mean, do you own other proproperties in that
Blackburn?
area?
No, nothing in
Blackburn.
Blackburn.
If it's just a one-off, I mean, when I invest in an area, I like to saturate an area, rather than just have random properties all over the country and random sort of SPVs you've set up.
Yeah,
I'm quite OCD in the sense that I like everything quite structured.
And it means you can systemize then.
Yeah, but again, I mean, if you can, if you can fold a house into your portfolio, which is going to cash flow and obviously appreciate in value over time. I know you're saying it's not a great area.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know how much it's going to grow.
Yeah,
It will grow. It will grow
just because that's
what
what property
level?
does. But again, going back to your financing strategy, I mean, yes, you can take a bridge out on the value, but lenders are not stupid. They want you to have some skin in the game as well. So while that is possible, they might then reduce your loan to value or something, so you've got some skin in the game. But
even if they do, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like 10 grand.
Yeah,
it's like 10 grand for a house.
Yeah. I mean, my thesis is just hold on to everything, and it means going back to the size of the portfolio. It is 11 million, but I've probably sold 4 million of kit probably in the last 18 months. And some of that is the Portsmouth kit that I acquired, way back. So
okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what to do on that one. I think if it was in a better area, I just wouldn't even question it. But because it's not a great area, and I don't have, like you said, I don't have other properties in that area, I just think, is that just going to be a hassle for no reason when we could just flip it, use the money that we make from the flip to buy something in the area that we actually want. I think if it's a single,
but it depends how much equity you've got in it. If you can then roll that into a HMO, which is going to be
Article 4.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I would then maybe look at selling it and moving the funds into another more high yielding deal, I guess.
Yeah.
It's I guess it all depends. I mean, that's the reason I've gone through that sort of process over the last 18 months and selling off that, because I think in the early days of just buying property, you meet people, don't you? And you go, do you want to do a JV? And you set up an SPV and you buy that with them. And, then I think I acquired a HMO in Salford, and, I acquired the shares of the company with the HMO in it. But then I had that and I was like, it's pointless having just a company with one HMO in it.
Yeah.
Because by the time you've done all your, your company house filings and all that, paid for your accounts and all that, it's
expensive for no reason.
It's not cost effective. So over the last period, I've scaled down the amount of SPVs I've got, amount of JVs I've got, basically like made everything much more structured.
Do you think it's important to do that at the beginning though? Because for me, I'm quite early in the sense that I've bought everything I've done. I've bought and sold. I trade stuff. I've got addicted to selling. So I was just buying and selling everything. Loved the profit margins. Was sourcing loads of stuff. Getting good fees from those. And now I've realised the value in buying and holding. And this past year, I've just gone to town buying stuff.
Yeah.
As part of that, I'm scaling up the amount of JVs and companies that I've got, and going through currently a bit of a restructure on the company side of things with my accountant. And I'm looking at going, it's not cheap to get this infrastructure in place, so the deals better be worth it.
Yeah. And I think as well is what is the purpose behind each SPV? I think in the early days you just say yes to anything, as an opportunity. But I think in the early stages, just being active and doing bits is probably more important than focusing too much on the structure. I think being active rather than not is important, but I definitely think as that sort of evolves, you kind of want to streamline everything and get it into like a group structure where it's well, tax efficient, but also time efficient, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
So that I've kind of gone on that process, and now I'm down to almost like a group structure of maybe 3 of my own companies and then 2 sort of SPVs, which are joint ventures. So
yeah. Okay. Interesting. So you went from buying your first buy-to-let, you then bought 18 apartments over the course of 4 years.
Yeah.
When did you get your first HMO? I know you kind of did a bit of a HMO-y thing with the place you live, but an intentional, I'm going to buy a house and rent it out room by room. That's my plan.
Yeah, I mean, probably my first HMO probably about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so much more recent. But I actually did a development between sort of then and that. My first development was, so we started to invest in like freehold ground rents. So we would buy like the freehold of like blocks of flats where we would then get the ground rent income.
Yeah.
So that's the whole reason we set up Urban Life Property Management, which was the management company, because then we had Securo, which was the maintenance company. So in our head, we said, right, if we go, and these things were quite cheap, you couldn't really borrow against them. So we went out and bought, freehold ground rents where, you would then, you'd have the ground rent. You'd also
directly off developers.
No, the first one we bought was actually from Allsops Auction.
Oh,
yes,
really?
we bought for 50 grand. We bought a freehold sort of ground rent, which was for 12 flats or 14 flats, can't remember now. And so we would get, I think it was like £250 ground rent off each of the leaseholders once a year. But then obviously through Urban Life, which was the management company, we could obviously then manage the properties.
Yeah.
We'd get obviously the insurance commission. We also then had Securo, which was like the cleaning, gardening, maintenance company.
So you got the ground rent and you also charge service charge, obviously.
Service charge, but obviously that was to run, but also we charged a management fee within that. But obviously there's lots of, you can then charge fees then within that. And then we had the maintenance company, so we would do the upkeep, the cleaning, the gardening, all the, sort of reactive maintenance and that sort of thing. So in our head, we were like, we're buying these ground cheap, but then we're like achieving a really good yield because of all the services that we can kind of offer. And we did that, but actually that ground rent we bought for 50 grand, we actually got planning to put 2-bedroom flats up in like a loft, like a roof void. Yeah, so it was in Chelmsford city centre. We went for planning and got that approved. And that was actually my first development, almost like a rooftop development with leaseholders living below. So you can imagine what that's like. I mean, talk about, I
bet that was
trying to manage 12 leaseholders, and you're in through winter. We stripped the whole roof off, had to have full wraparound scaffold with a tin lid. And we've stripped the whole roof off to form this new 2-bed flat, and that was my first taste of development.
So nice and complicated for your first one.
And probably the hardest thing was like managing like the leaseholders living below their expectations. Because quite rightly, there was like uproar. But that's what we did. So that was my first. I don't know what year that was. It must have been like, I'm going to say like 2016, something like that. And then sort of from there, I don't think I did anything after that. I think I was mentally scarred from that one. And then really since then kind of bought a house, converted to 2 flats, and then did that a couple of times. And then I bought a house, and that was my first sort of HMO from there. Went straight in with like a Sui Generis 8-bed HMO. That was a learning curve, Yeah,
I bet. So that's that 8-bed Sui Generis HMO. Tell me about it. Talk to me about what that was like. Because that's not like I said, for me, I sat on the idea of doing HMOs for a long time. Learned a lot about them. Learned about the different use classes and having to go through planning. And that's what put me off. Did you know did you know there was an option to do a 6-bed and not have to go through planning? Or did you just go, I've got no idea, let's just crack on and do it? And you just learn on the go? Or
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I get a lot of messages on Instagram now and social saying, where did you do your, who did you do your training with? And I'm like, I've never done a training course in my life. Never. It's just like on-site experience, actually just physically going out and doing it. And so when we bought this house, big Victorian house in Southend, and I think it was originally 2 flats, but it had planning to turn it back to a C3 dwelling. So we turned it back to a C3 dwelling. Then we did a loft conversion under PD. And then we had to go from C3 to C4, 6-bed HMO, show 2 of the rooms as a storeroom. And then we went for full planning as an 8-bed HMO. They knocked back the plan in, so we had to go to appeal. And then, they approved the 8-bed on the appeal. So, but there's so much that goes into that. I've actually made some videos on my YouTube because there's so much that goes into, when 6-bed, as soon as you go over that sort of threshold into 7 and 8, fire alarm systems, fire compartmentation, the way that you have to, the amount of effort that goes into those. And we just basically tripped our way through and sort of learn on the job, so to speak.
What's the... I've spoken about this before. Get a commercial valuation. That is significantly beneficial for a lot of HMO investors, landlords. Typically, for anyone who isn't aware, essentially you can get your bricks and mortar valuation will just be a 3-bed house that's done up. The house next door is a 3-bed house that was done up, sold last year for X, and therefore your house is probably worth X as well. So it's just, what are people buying normal houses for? In terms of commercial valuations, people also talk about investment values. What that is essentially the valuer seeing your property as almost like a business, as well as just a building. And so they give you an uplift in valuation, meaning you can borrow more money against the asset. What's the benefit of that? Talk to me about what the benefit of that is. Why would someone want to have more debt against their property?
Well, I mean, that's the reason we only do Sui Generis sort of HMOs, to ensure that we get that commercial valuation. Some people believe that you can get a commercial valuation on a 6-bed, which is still like C4 permitted development, which I think is a bit of a grey area.
I think I've spoken to people who can. There's a guy called Saj Hussein. I really like him. I don't know if you've come across his content on social media. He's a really, really nice guy, very knowledgeable about this stuff. He's done it before. But what he told me was it is a bit of a hit and miss sort of thing, because it's not Sui Generis, and you have to... There's no way you could turn it into a 6-bed with 3 bathrooms and it'd be classed as, commercially valuable. You'd have to fully... what he said was convert it to the point where it cannot be converted back to a normal residential dwelling. Whereas with 7 beds, you have to do that anyway. So you're guaranteed to get that, and you get the change in use class. The 6-bed, I've heard it's hit and miss. Personally, I wouldn't want to take the risk of just going...
I mean,
I hope I get it.
I mean, valuations can be a grey area on a 7-bed. I mean, HMO valuations are highly subjective. You could have one surveyor come out and value at 550. Next one comes along 650. The next one 700. It's highly subjective. There's not like a sort of like a rule of thumb that everyone follows. I've just actually had 2 surveys carried out on my 8-bed HMO I've just finished, and also my 7-bed HMO. And I should get the values back any day. But, I mean, based on the values, of course, we always take out bridging finance. But based on the values down where we are, 7-bed's valued at about 650. And an 8-bed's probably about 700, 750, something like that. So that's what we're looking to achieve. But again, it's highly subjective. And everyone sort of values it by a different method. So someone will take off like 20% off cost and then give it a 7.5% yield. Someone would discount it more, and it's just so it's
completely up to the surveyor.
It's completely up to the surveyor.
Do you have to be strategic with which lenders you go with, or is it more the surveyor that you go with?
I mean, we do look at I'm looking to refinance those with Paragon, who have done our other HMO. Generally, they're quite competitive within the HMO market in terms of product, but also their surveyors are generally there or thereabouts. And obviously, going back to your other question about why would someone do that, because if you achieve a commercial valuation, obviously the valuation is based on the income it generates and not the bricks and mortar. So the house next door could technically be 450 grand, but your house could be 650 grand because its value is based on the income it can then generate. So that's why we always go like 7 beds plus Sui Generis. And obviously with that, you've got obviously higher value, you've got more chance. Yes, you've got to borrow more against it, but then you've got more chance of taking out your original investment, and then obviously rolling into the next sort of deal. So
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, then make sure that you click the subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss any uploads. It would mean so much to me personally and also really help us out as a channel.
Yes, the benefit of getting that commercial value is if you can get on 750, you get a value of 750 when actually bricks and mortar, it should be 500 or 550. If you get 750, you can pull more money out the deal to recycle it and go again and reinvest.
And you've got more debt, but then again, you've got an asset which generates really good income, so you can always service the debt.
Yeah.
So really it's a case of maximising the loan you can get against the property and then rolling that into the next deal and sort of creating that sort of leverage.
So how do you go about the planning process? Imagine, and this is obviously, like you say, incredibly complex, so we can't dive into everything right now. Say I want to start investing in HMOs, I want to go for Sui Generis HMOs and go through planning and get those commercial valuations to really scale up a portfolio, recycle cash, all that stuff. In terms of the first step, does it matter where it is, or is it more about what income it will get?
Well, the area matters, because like I said, if you're Article 4, then that's a different process to if you're not in Article 4. But really the process is that you're generally going to buy a house which is probably C3, so single dwelling house, and that allows you under, I think you file a lawful development certificate, which allows you to then transfer that to a C4, which is up to a 6-bed HMO. So obviously when we buy the property, we always then go through that process. If we're doing extensions, we do that under PD as the C3, and then once we've done that, we then file the certificate, transfer that across to then a C4 planning case. And then from there, then you obviously got to make your full planning application then to take that from C4 up to however many bedrooms.
Okay, so you actually turn it into a C4 use class. So you get it to, say, get sign off for 6 beds.
Yeah.
Or 6 tenants, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to them and say, right, this is already a 6-bed HMO. We actually have capacity for it to be an 8-bed.
Yeah.
And then you just go through planning to get it up to the 8-bed.
Yeah, so while we're doing that, we're doing the development, but as an 8-bed. But obviously in the plans, going C3, C4, you would show 6 bedrooms, 2 storerooms. And then obviously when you go full planning, you obviously just change the storerooms or whatever rooms to bedrooms.
So why wouldn't you jump from C3 and just jump straight into planning and try and go for that?
Because I think there would be more objections. So down in Southend, the council have got a policy in place whereby they obviously want to sort of protect family homes, and their argument could be that it's a loss of a family home. Whereas
if it's not already a family home,
if it's a HMO already, you can't really say it's a loss of a family home. So if it's then going C4, and it's that step process in increments. If you go, oh yes, a 3-bed house, I'm going to turn it to an 8-bed HMO. They might deem that quite an aggressive move. Whereas if you was just to go C4, it's trading as a C4, HMO license, and we're going to step that up to make use of the other rooms and turn it into a Sui Generis 8-bed.
Yeah. How do you go about that process in terms of timescales? Do you do all of that so upon purchase, you then go through to get the certificate for the C4 use class? Yeah. Are you then hoping that by the time you've finished your development, you can then go through planning? Or is it more of you have to sit on it as a C4 for a year and then you go to planning? Or how do you run that usually?
I guess the longer you can leave that as a C4 before going full planning, I guess it probably looks more genuine as a process rather than literally go C4, Sui Generis to the planning department. But no, we literally do it straight away. So, once we've bought a property and we start the works, we'll obviously submit the lawful development certificate to go from C3 to C4 once we've done the sort of loft extension if it needs one, or the rear extension under PD. And then basically, so really the thing is we turn around these things so quick now. We turn around an 8-bed HMO in 5 months. So generally by month 5 or 6, we would like to have submitted the full plan application to go to Sui Generis. There is a bit of an overlap. But what we always do is we always then rent 6 of the bedrooms, and then at least the income, income from the 6 bedrooms is at least servicing the debt, which is then still rolled up at that point. And then obviously once planning comes through, So obviously Paragon have come out, done the surveys on one of my HMOs, which is it's currently a 6-bed. We're going through full planning. We get the decision this month. But obviously their sort of loan drawdown would be subject to getting full planning approval as the 8-bed.
So you went through that 8-bed process on your first deal. You said you kind of tripped your way into making that work.
Yeah.
How do you now go forward buying multiple properties where you don't have planning on it? What happens if, because I suppose the question I get, and that I would even have, is what happens if you don't get planning? So what's the, surely that is incredibly risky, because then you don't get the income that you need, you don't get the valuation you need.
Yeah.
How do you de-risk a sui generis HMO development?
Well, I mean, it's planless. There is always an element of risk, but I think as long as the house meets the HMO guidelines in terms of, minimum space requirements for rooms, the amenities, if you're doing 8 beds, double fridge freezer, double washing machine, double sinks, and all that, double hobs and stuff like that, then yes, it might get knocked back in planning, but generally you'll get it agreed on appeal. So yes, there is an element of risk, but yeah, it's not something I've come unstuck with yet. So
you've not had any property where you have been outright rejected?
No, not yet.
Okay. And how many sui generis HMOs have you done?
3. We've got one ongoing at the moment, which should be a 10-bed subject to planning, but even if it makes an 8, it's a really nice HMO. We've got one that we complete on this Friday, which makes a 7-bed. I think it's where it depends on the size, like 6-bed under PD, going 6 to 7, generally the planners were like, okay, it's 1 extra bedroom. They'll generally sail through. Going then from 6 to 8, obviously the more bedrooms, obviously going from 6 to 10 is obviously quite a big jump. That might be a process, that one. There might be another step to that in the sense that you'll go 6 to 8. You might operate as 8 as a year before you then go back and go, actually, we've converted the loft rooms now to, and then you do an extra step in the process. So, and actually, I've read a lot of feasibility studies on HMOs locally, and obviously, yes, there is objections there, but the objections there, a lot of the objections are basically they get, it basically comes down to like technicalities. So it might be a case that they've not put, a bike store in, or a bin store, or
something you can actually fix,
or a room that falls under like the minimum space requirement, and generally it falls down on that. So if you do everything, as per the guidelines, generally, that you will get them approved.
Well, that's what I was thinking, because going from a C3 to a C4, so turning the house from a 3-bed into a 6-bed HMO, and you just get a license for it, and it's non-Article 4, nice and simple.
Yeah.
As long as you meet the council's criteria,
they
actually can't refuse it, right?
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't be the same with planning, because they can refuse it. But is that basically all it is? It's you have to go through planning because we need you to hit this criteria, this criteria, this criteria. And as long as you tick all those boxes, do they have a leg to stand on to not approve it? Is that why you say when you appeal it?
Yeah, you generally appeal it. I mean, but I think they'll come around, and we always do them to a good standard as well. We're going for, so they can come around and see that, you've made the effort, you meet all of the regulations, the guidelines that they've sort of set out for you to sort of meet. So if you do all of that, then, it's, I wouldn't say it's a given, because, I'm sure they can find other reasons, but.
Okay. Because I'm looking at it now, and I'm thinking, I could do with scaling it up. And I think the scale is either more properties or more units per property. And I would quite like to start moving more into the condensed, more local to me, and higher unit sort of volume of units in terms of a scaling process. The thing with mine is where I live in Trafford, the whole area is covered in Article 4. Yeah. Have you ever bought anything in Article 4 before?
Not in Article 4, no.
Right. Would you steer clear of it? Or?
Well, again, I think it's still achievable, but again, you've got to do full planning even to go 6 beds. So, luckily where we are, Southend has just become a city, so whether that changes in time, but I've never done anything in Article 4.
Yeah, because obviously you said the steps that you go on is C3 to C4.
Yeah.
And then you go from C4 into Sui Generis, but you can't even do C3 to C4 without going through full planning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's something I'm weighing up. I'm also looking at the HMO register thinking, could I maybe pick up a 6-bed HMO that's already established,
Yeah.
buy it, renovate it, extend it, convert the attic, something like that,
Yeah.
and bump it up to an 8-bed, for
I
example.
mean, if you can do that, I mean, we've just recently done that. So we picked up a house which there was one guy living in it. So he never then turned it back to C3, but the person before then was operating it as a HMO. So it was already C4. So when I bought it, started the renovation, it was a C4, it's a 6-bed HMO. I just had one step in the process, full planning, and it got straight approved. But that had been trading as like a C4 HMO since like 2018. So that one just, sailed straight through. So if you can pick up something that, because I think a lot of people have converted these HMOs, just taken the house but converted it to the room, and they leave a lot of value in terms of like the loft space, or actually take out some of the large chimney breasts and create additional room and stuff like that. So, and if it's already trading as a C4 HMO, going full planning and creating some additional value within the house is probably quite straightforward.
Yeah, I could imagine. So what's been the biggest learning curve from going from buying discounted flats off plan to big HMO conversions and developments and everything that you've got going on at the moment? What do you feel has been the moment in that journey where you've gone, this is like, it's too hard? Is there been that moment?
No, I'm probably about to experience it with my first new build site. Okay. But no, I don't think so. I think from my side, I mean, lenders love it, and from my side, I was buying buy-to-lets, understanding the market, being around property people and trying to understand property just in general. And then I've gone from a house to 2-flat conversion, done that a couple of times. Obviously did the loft conversion on the house, and I think there's almost that track record of, yes, stepping up in terms of what I'm doing, but never overstepping. So I kind of gain knowledge along the way, and obviously every development, you'll always learn something new. Every day is a learning day in property. You'll never know everything. And that's now kind of built up. We've obviously done the commercial to residential conversion of 7 flats. Building a new build flat was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of sort of the regulations that sort of are around new build now, in terms of Part O, Part K, and just thermal junctions. And it's like, it's crazy the amount that goes into that. And I'm starting to see that now on the new build site, which I'm about to start. But again, I've got a good team around me, and we'll kind of trip our way through, and I'll hopefully come out the back end of it a sort of better developer. So there's not one thing that I've gone, that was
too much,
or...
Which is interesting that you say that off the back of not having any kind of formal or informal education. You just kind of cracked on with it, got on with it, and managed to get by. It's pretty impressive that you've managed to do that. As someone who does, because what's the development, the new build development you've got going on? What's that one?
So I'm building a couple of like detached, sits on quite a nice plot, 2 like detached chalet bungalows, which is a bit of a convoluted deal, but I've had that site for 5 years. So 5 years, but obviously back then you'd do anything to find a deal or make something work, find an opportunity. I mean, if I was to do that deal again now, I probably wouldn't have structured it in the same way as I did. But basically, so we've got like a large site. There's a chalet bungalow on one side, then like a big equestrian centre on the side, a plot of land. So basically, I bought the house with Mum. We basically used her equity, and basically now she lives in the house.
Oh, really?
And then we basically took a mortgage, and now I'm just about to refinance. Now I've got full planning, refinance the site, do a title split off Mum's ownership, and then obviously the development debt will then go on the site. And then basically build that out. But I think GDV is about 1.65 million, so the plots are about 800 grand each. But obviously I've had the planning uplift on that as well, so the site only cost me like 300 grand. I think we're going to be about 600 grand to build it plus costs. So there's a nice profit in that. Which gives me comfort that it's my first new build site and it's not too tight. If you're working to these like 15% margins, you think, God, if I catch a cold, this could go downhill really fast. So I'm comfortable where that sits. So I'm looking forward to starting that, which should be hopefully next month. But weather permitting, I guess.
Yeah. For anyone listening who is thinking, wow, it sounds like you've got loads going on. You've got your development, you've got the HMO conversions, you've got your portfolio of buy-to-lets, and they're thinking, do you know, I'd love to get involved.
Yeah.
What advice, what tips would you give someone to get started, to do what you do, considering the breadth of experience? Because a lot of people I speak to, they'll either be developers, or they'll be HMO experts, or they'll be buy-to-let landlords. You kind of have you do have a very broad spectrum of experience.
Yeah.
How do you advise people to, get started in property?
It's difficult, but I am getting that question a lot, so I probably should.
You will do. The more Instagram posts you do, I notice you've scaled that up. You'll get that question every day.
It's difficult to advise someone. I guess the standard response is, podcasts, books, stuff like that. But I mean, there's no experience like just going out there and starting, taking action, and just getting started, and you'll just pick it up as you go along. I know that's probably quite difficult, because then a lot of people that say, oh, well, I want to get started in property, also go, actually, I've got no capital.
Yeah. So what would you? So let's put it this way then. You're a locksmith. Back at you're sat across yourself as a locksmith, and you're advising yourself back then. How old were you when you were doing that? Just before you started the secure?
Early 20s.
Early 20s. So your 21-year-old self is sat across from you. What would you have advised him to do?
I mean, obviously I had money, so I could then sort of invest. I was just picking up single-let, buy-to-let investments, the Portsmouth flats. Obviously I've got quite a lot of property in Warrington, which I've sort of accumulated over the sort of last few years. But I think if you're sat there with the idea that you would like to get involved in property, but you've got no knowledge, it's different. If you've got capital, you can then put that to work and learn on the job. If you've got no capital, you've got to just
learn
somewhere. You've got to, go to the free courses, forget the upsell, which will come. just go to the courses and just pick up these nuggets, be around property people, just sit there and just listen to the conversations and just absorb knowledge. YouTube, there's a lot of good value on YouTube. There's probably as much value on YouTube as there is in the courses anyway. That actually is all free. You don't need to pay for. So I would maybe start there. I mean, check my YouTube channel. I just think you've just got to just get involved. I think that if you look at the property strategies, I think a starting point is always deal sourcing, rent to rent, and those sort of strategies where you don't really need capital.
Low barrier to entry.
And that's the reason why I guess you're seeing a lot of people promote courses in those areas and strategies at the moment, because they are more accessible to people, which opens up the market to who they can sell those courses to.
Yeah.
But I do think that's a good place to start, because if you can learn the art of deal sourcing, not repurposing stuff that you've seen off another deal sourcer, actually going out there, finding deals, analysing deals, and knowing that it stacks. Yes, it might be a case you don't have access to capital, so you might have to then go and sell that deal. But I think if you go through that process, alongside that, network, meet people, learn to raise finance, you'll get to the point where you can actually then do your first deal. And then, like I say, you'll learn so much on your first deal. So kind of once you've gone through that process once, twice, you'll just pick up this knowledge, and then you'll be off. So I think that's a sort of starting position.
Okay, so that's what you would say to somebody who is just getting started. No knowledge, no experience, no money.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to somebody who maybe they've got their first buy-to-let, maybe they've got a couple of rent-to-rents or a sourcing business, or they've dabbled in property, they've done bits here and there, and they're listening to this thinking, I'd love to turn this into something big, a business. I'd love to scale it into doing multiple Sui Generis HMOs, development sites. How does someone go from deal number 1 to their next 10 deals as quickly and effectively as possible, maybe?
I would say probably, you've got to be consistent, got to be disciplined. I think, take action. I think learn to raise capital. I think that's a big factor. And if you want to push on and grow a portfolio, networking, I guess. Yeah, I mean, deal flow is important as well. But I think the main thing is, just, because I've, people might look at me and go, "Bly, he's there." But I mean, I have invested now for, 10, 12 years circa. Sort of my journey and my success I've had today has been compounded by the fact that I've operated and sold businesses alongside my sort of property journey as well. So I would just say consistently take action, keep acquiring all things knowledge, access to capital, keep taking action. And it's obviously, it's the compound effect, isn't it? Just the longer you take action, remain disciplined to that, just, you'll eventually get there, and then you'll start experiencing like exponential growth in terms of, what you're doing and what you're achieving. So it's just a case of just keep going and take action, really.
Yeah, I've read a book, The Compound Effect. I don't know if that's where you got
It's one of my, I live by that.
I love that book. It's so good. For anyone listening, it's a fantastic book all about essentially the core, and I'm not giving away the whole book, it's still worth reading.
Yeah.
The core message is small actions on repeat over a consistent period of time create massive change and massive leverage. And I've seen that in my own business. You've seen that in your own businesses, and I couldn't recommend that more. I think it's a really good point that a lot of people are so nervous about, or over analytical about waiting for the perfect deal, waiting for the perfect business, that they don't take step number one. But if you take step number one, then you can take step number two, and then you can take step number three, and you'd be really surprised at how far you can go, how much you can grow over a period of time. Yeah, I mean, I sort of, not just in business and in property, I mean, I kind of consider that in all aspects of life. And even if you're being healthy, don't do the 12-week body transformation because it's not sustainable. Go out, first achieve 10,000 steps, then drink, 4 litres of water, then start eating healthy, then go to the gym. And it's that sort of small, consistent action over a longer period of time. Obviously, you achieve sort of great results. So, I just think, if you used to sort of, read the book if you haven't, and they've sort of factored that into your sort of property journey, then that's all it is. Just take consistent action, and then that will then become the norm. And then you'll go again, you'll step up to an 8-bed Sui Generis. I mean, next time we talk on the podcast, I might have moved up to, commercial to residential, student accommodation. I'm doing like a 40-bedroom student hall. I mean, it's just that consistent action, gaining knowledge, taking action, raising finance, and just ultimately just keep pushing. Yeah, 100%. Mitch, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been really helpful. I wanted to get you on because I know you said you started your social media back in May. I kind of caught you through social media and have seen the content you're putting out there, the value that you're putting out there, both on YouTube, Instagram. You don't just do your developments and your HMO conversions to a high standard, but you do your social media to a high standard. Like, you're all about value, and you can see that threaded throughout your business, throughout your social media presence. And I think you're a great asset to the property industry. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been really good. And if anyone wants to find you on social media or connect with you in any way, where can they find you?
So Instagram's sort of where I am most active. So my handle's Mitch Nunn. I've also got a YouTube channel, Mitch Nunn Property. I've got a few videos on there. But mainly Instagram. So amazing. Connect and look forward to catching up. As
I say, his social media is filled with value, so it's definitely worth following him and checking in with him. So hope you've enjoyed the podcast. For anyone listening, I've definitely enjoyed having you on, Mitch.
No, I've enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much.
If you enjoyed the show, then make sure that you click the subscribe button and also hit the bell notification so you don't miss an upload. We're on YouTube, but we're also on all podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts.